How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am very good. Thank you so much for being able to change this around.
No, that was fine. I have one of those days where it's like every minute is scheduled, and then if like one thing gets behind, then everything gets behind, and
Sure.
I have to like film this performance thing after, so I'm like doing full hair and makeup, which is not something I would normally do for a normal day. So
Okay. Well, yeah, if it would be easier to do it later, like let me know. I don't want you to feel like,
no, I'm good
you
to go.
know,
I'm
you're
good
going to
to go.
be concerned about things later, I don't want to screw up everything else for you.
No, I am good to go. And I mean, honestly, I shouldn't complain because I've been complaining about how bored I've been for the last, 6 to 7 months. And now I'm like finally having stuff to do again. So it's all good.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're able to start working again. It's been quite a weird year. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Say the
Well,
least.
thank you. Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for doing this. Our podcast is about your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Cool.
I did read originally from Canada, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about where you grew up in Canada.
Um, so I was born and raised in Bowmanville, Ontario, which is a very small town. I guess it'd be about like an hour east and a bit north of Toronto.
Hmm.
I mean, actually, I guess it's not really that small anymore. It's grown a lot since I lived there, but I kind of lived on the outskirts of it, and it was very, very rural, a lot of farms and stuff. And yeah, I lived there until I think I was 17 when I moved out, almost 18 to go to college. I went to McGill University in Montreal to study opera, which
Oh, awesome.
yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. I mean, I was really into sports. Probably even more so than music, like all through middle school and high school. I was a competitive snowboarder for a
Oh,
long
wow. That's
time. So
awesome.
yeah, it was awesome. It was tough on my body though.
Sure. Wow, that's amazing.
I was a competitive snowboarder, and I was kind of when I was near the end of high school, it was kind of a point to where, going to the Olympics was, my big goal and everything. Sorry, my dog's here.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
um, and I was kind of like working towards that goal, and I was competing a lot. And my parents wanted me to go to school, and so we kind of made a deal that if I was going to make the national development team, at the end of high school, that I could defer college for a year to go and pursue that. um, and then in my last year of high school, I was warming up for a competition, and I had a really bad, really scary fall. I broke my back, broke my
Oh
collarbone,
my
my
gosh.
shoulder, severe concussion. I mean, it was really scary. I probably, I was very lucky. I should have been paralyzed the way I fell. Um,
Oh
but,
my
but
goodness.
thankfully, by the grace of God, I was relatively okay. But it was a very long recovery for
Sure.
me, and it kind of made me rethink things a little bit, um,
Mhm.
because it scared me so much.
Oh, for
And
sure.
yeah, and I think during that time, like kind of the only thing I was really depressed during that whole recovery, because I mean I was literally like bedridden and like couldn't even walk at first, and so
Right.
I spent a lot of time just laying around with my own thoughts, and kind of the only thing that kept me, that made me happy or that kept me occupied was music, just like listening to music and writing lyrics. And so I kind of turned to music in a big way during that time. And when I came out of that recovery, my priorities were just different. And I was just way more focused on music. Cause I mean, music was always there. I mean, they were kind of doing
Mhm.
this, up and
Sure.
down, back and forth through most of my life. I guess I just never really, at first, I just never really considered that I could really make a career out of music. I just didn't know if it was something. I didn't know if I was like good enough to do it for a living. And so yeah, when I came out of that, I just started focusing on music, and I did go to school. I took vocal lessons all through high school, and my teacher was, she was coming more from the classical training side of things. And I guess I just had this really big voice, and I had a lot of power and range. And so she was always telling me I should be an opera singer. And when I got to school, when I got to university, it was very clear to me that I was not going to be an opera singer. And it was something that I wasn't really passionate about. I'm glad I did it because it's a really good foundation just as
Mhm.
singer in general. I mean, learning the techniques, learning how to sing properly, how to take care of your voice, all that kind of stuff.
Sing in different languages. I mean,
yeah, I had to sing in every
crazy.
German, Italian, Latin,
Yeah.
like everything. So yeah, I kind of ended up switching into the jazz program there because I had met a lot of musicians that were in the jazz program. I was in this 10-piece funk band, like Tower of Power kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
And that was when I really started like writing more songs, like, and performing them like with the band. And so then I switched to the jazz program, and it was kind of like, okay, this is closer to what I like, but still not really it. And then I ended up going back home, back to Bowmanville for a summer. I think it would have been after my second or third year, maybe second year, I think. And I met this guy, Sam, and we used to play the same open mic every Monday. That was kind of like literally the only thing to do in our town. It was like the big night that everybody went to. And, you know, he grew up on a lot of like bluegrass and folk and Americana stuff. And I remember hearing him play, and he was just this phenomenal guitar player, singer, songwriter. And, you know, we became friends and started writing songs together and playing together and became a duo. And then we started dating, which, you know, didn't work out in the end. We ended up doing the Fleetwood Mac thing and like still being a band after we broke up. But it was, you know, it still worked. It was a huge turning point for me, I think, in terms of figuring out who I was as an artist, because that was getting me a lot closer to country music. Because, you know, I played in so many bands because I love so many styles of music, and I grew up on so many styles of music that it was almost like I had to try everything on to see what really fit. And when I got to, you know, we played in this bluegrass band for like 4 years. We made 2 records independently, and we toured quite a bit. And it was, you know, and it was like that point in my life where I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. And that then translated kind of into country, because I mean, bluegrass is a very niche kind of genre, and it's kind of tough to like really get big doing just bluegrass. And I felt like the way I was writing songs was leaning more towards like modern country anyway. So that was kind of what brought me to current Meghan as an artist, I guess. Sorry, I told you a lot.
No, I love that. That's crazy. So I mean, I want to rewind quite a bit real quick, because I'm very curious. So you said you went, you know, your main focus was snowboarding, and then you went to college for opera. Like, were you always, you must have been a pretty good singer as a kid up through, you know, middle school and high school, to be able to just get into college on a vocal, like on such a like difficult, you know, way to sing scholarship, I would think.
No, it's definitely very challenging for sure. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know if I could do it anymore. I've drank too much whiskey and probably smoked too many cigarettes and stuff to do that now. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, the first time I can think of where like I really realized I could sing, I was probably like, I want to say maybe 12 or 13. I think I was in 6th grade, because we were doing a school musical. And you know, like I said, I always loved music, but I don't remember, at least anyway, like thinking about it in a serious way, you know, as a singer or as an artist, until about that time, because I auditioned for the school musical, and my teacher, I guess I just kind of blew everyone away, and they're like, whoa, like you're really good at this, you know, and have you ever thought of taking lessons and stuff? And so they mentioned it to my parents. And so, you know, my parents, I mean, one thing I'll say for them, they always, you know, any opportunity I wanted. I mean, I wasn't spoiled in terms of like, oh, you want those new jeans, you want a car, cool. It was like, you want to play sports, you want to get lessons, you want to do something that's going to better yourself or help you find your passion. They always made it happen for my sister and I. So I started taking lessons. And I think the opera thing just came from the fact that the teacher I had, you know, that was her passion and that was her focus. And she saw potential in me just because of the natural power and range, I guess, that I had. And so I did all the Royal Conservatory grades and tests and stuff. And it was like, I don't know, looking back, I didn't really love it. I didn't really love, you know, the music so much. I like, this is going to sound bad, but I mean, I like doing things that I'm good at, you know? And it was
who doesn't, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense.
I like doing things that I'm good at. And I progressed at it and I excelled at it. I just hadn't figured out like what my style was yet. I was just kind of figuring it out. And I think I also really, I think a big part of it was that I really enjoy a challenge and I thrive on a challenge. And it's challenging music. And there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of technique and a lot of strategy. Like it's very kind of rigid, which is probably why it turned out it wasn't great for me. But I did, you know, I did enjoy that challenge of learning in that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you said you went from opera to a jazz band and then into the folk, you know, duo that you're in.
Yeah.
When did you start writing music on your own?
I mean, the first time I can remember, I feel like I kind of would start, I was always writing lyrics, I felt like, whether it was like kind of almost just like a more of like a poem or even like journaling and stuff. I felt like I always had this natural instinct to write stuff down in a way that was like writing a song. Like I wanted it to be metaphorical and I wanted it to sound cool, you know, that kind of thing. And like, I feel like when I really started taking songwriting seriously was when I went into college and I was in this funk band. So myself and a couple of the other guys in this band, two of the horn players, so our sax player, he did a lot of the arrangements. Like we were like Tower Power, like 5-piece horn section, rhythm section, and me. And I was the only girl in the band. And, you know, so a couple of the guys, our guitar player and I would say our sax player were the main ones that were kind of involved in the writing. But I did a lot of that writing on my own because I was the singer. So they kind of were just like, you sing what you want, you know?
Sure.
Like Jeff would put together these horn arrangements and we, you know, the music, and I would kind of just put the lyric and melody to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and it was because I was just so new to that whole thing that it was, they didn't really, you know, none of them really wanted to be responsible, I guess, for that. They're like, you're the singer, so you decide what you want to say and how you want to say it, you know, kind of thing. And then after that, it was, you know, when I met Sam and we became a duo. I think writing with him was probably a really like pivotal moment for me as a songwriter because you know, he grew up his dad is a phenomenal songwriter, musician. So he grew up around it. And that was something that was like a big part of his life for a lot longer than it was a part of my life. And so I felt like I really learned a lot from him and the way that he wrote songs. And then also learning that like, you know, finding my own voice and finding the way I like to write songs and, you know, was a little bit different than what he did. And I was able to learn kind of both things. And like, you know, he would write songs also where, you know, he would write guitar parts that he knew were kind of like just outside of my skill set, but he also knew that I would be damned if I told him that was the case. And I would end up just going and sit there, you know, and practice it and figure it out till I could get it. So I became a much more proficient guitar player because of him and that band. Also because when you're playing in like a 4-piece bluegrass band, I mean, we had, you know, guitar, mandolin, upright bass, and fiddle. And then I started taking up banjo later on in the band. But it's like, there's only 4 instruments and it's all acoustic. If you are not playing well, it shows. Like, there's nothing to hide what you are doing. Every single instrument and part is like very out there. It's not like you've got tracks and drums and keys and like all this stuff going on. Like, it's just there. So that was a huge part of my growth as a guitar player, as a musician, because I never took lessons. I was self-taught on guitar and I never really started playing, honestly, until my early 20s. So,
wow.
Yeah. So my parents bought me my first guitar. It was like a graduation present, actually, coming out of high school. But then even then I was like, because I was still kind of focused on the snowboarding and stuff and then going into school. Even then, I feel like I didn't really start actually thinking about playing guitar seriously until I met Sam and started playing in this bluegrass band. But a big part of me playing guitar was like, to me, it was just a vehicle to write a song because I didn't want to have to depend on somebody, you know, to write a song. I wanted to be able to sit down with a guitar or an instrument, you know, and write a song on my own.
Sure.
Depend on anybody. And it was more portable than a piano. So
yeah, because you went from, you know, this jazz band where you'd show up, they'd have the musical arrangements and you would just kind of write down melodies and your lyrics, correct? Yeah. So then you're going to more of a very intimate setting where you're writing directly and, you know, learning guitar and, you know, building that aspect as a songwriter. And so when that band kind of stopped and you started what you're doing now, were you still like at this point, were you still in Canada and is that where you started as a solo artist as well?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so this band, you know, we toured together, played together for, I think it was almost like 4 years. But I think what it came down to is that, you know, the other guys in the band had other interests or other jobs that were a potential plan B or things they could fall back on. And I didn't. Like, this was it. It was the only thing for me. And, you know, I think part of it too is I was starting to really come into my own. Well, when after Sam and I broke up, but still stayed a band, I think it was almost a year that we were a band after we had broken up.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, and I mean, I won't lie and say that it was easy. It was definitely had its issues, but we were really determined to stay friends and be respectful of each other and keep the band together, because there was a lot of respect there. It was, you know,
Hmm.
and just as musicians. And so that was kind of when I went from that place of always writing with him. We always wrote everything together, to writing stuff on my own, because I was wanting to feel that independence of like, well, this is what I'm going to bring to the table. This is how I want to write songs. Because I didn't always agree with how he wrote songs, but I felt like he was more experienced and, you know, just had more going on. And so I kind of deferred to him because I didn't have that confidence yet in myself as a songwriter. So
Hmm.
when we broke up, obviously, you know, we were playing together. We weren't really like getting together as two people though and writing intimately, you know, it just
Hmm.
wasn't a thing anymore. So I started writing a lot by myself. And when I was given that kind of space and freedom to write things the way I wanted to write them, I started learning that, you know, the way I wrote naturally was really very country. It was very
Hmm.
kind of modern country. And I was starting to see, you know, or even rock. Like I loved a lot of, you know, classic rock and southern rock growing up. And so when I wasn't in the room with someone who was a little bit more dominant as a songwriter, I was noticing my own influences and my own style starting to come out more. And
Hmm.
so in combination with some of the other guys wanting to pursue other things and me being like, well, this is it for me. Like I'm trying to be an artist, you know, I'm trying to be a band or an artist. So I had to kind of like figure out who I was as a solo artist. And the natural progression was to do country,
Hmm.
because that's what I was kind of doing anyway without meaning to. And it was just the first time I didn't have all these other influences of bandmates who were kind of, you know, influencing the way I was writing or the way I looked or the way I sounded. And when I kind of had to just figure out who I was, that's what it was.
Hmm. Did you have like an early on, like a validating moment that that was a good decision on your part? You know what I mean? Because you obviously have,
um, I
you know,
think,
achieved quite a bit as a solo artist, you know,
I
and
mean,
I wonder if there was a
probably,
moment early on that you were like, you know, see, I knew I should be doing this kind of.
I mean, I probably when I signed my record deal. I mean,
Okay.
you know, that was because to be honest, I was pretty scared and unsure until then. Because
Hmm.
those in between years of like between, you know, when I left the bluegrass band and when I signed my first record deal with Warner Canada,
Hmm.
those were the hardest years of my life.
I
I
can
was
imagine.
I was really, really broke. I felt kind of lost.
Hmm.
I got into some really toxic relationships that kind of kept me from being motivated in what my ultimate goal was. You know, I kind of got off track a little bit, and you know, I didn't have the confidence and I felt a little stuck, like how the hell do I get from here to where I want to be? Like I couldn't
Hmm.
see. It was like the first time in my life where I couldn't see that immediate path of how to get to where I wanted to go.
Hmm.
And all I could do was just keep playing and
Hmm.
keep trying to write and, you know, get my name out there, get people to know who I was. So I mean, I played every open mic, every bar that would have me. You know, I just played and played and played and tried to just like hone in on my skill and figure out who I was. Because I feel like at the point it was like I felt confident in my ability and my general talent to do what I wanted to do. But I also, on some level, knew that I didn't really have the songs or the sound like honed in yet to be able to like walk into a record label and get them to sign me.
Hmm.
And I think part of it was, you know, I got management, which really helped find somebody because I just didn't have experience in the business. I didn't know anything
Hmm.
about the industry or the business side of things or how to make that happen. And so when I got my first manager, you know, they were the one that kind of got me, you know, in the room with publishers and labels. And then it was like up to me to walk in there and show them that I had something.
Sure.
I think you know, when I first started coming down to Nashville, which I guess would have been maybe a year or two before I signed my deal, and getting to get into rooms with like really great writers and experienced writers, and kind of learning how to write a song, you know, in the Nashville way or whatever, you know, that made me really inspired and really focused. Because to me, feeling like I'm not up to snuff is like a challenge. And it's like, okay, now I know where I need to be, and I know I'm not there. So all I got to do is just do it. You know, I didn't find it discouraging. I found it very inspiring. And that, you know, that led to me getting my first record deal. And I think in a lot of ways I used to get frustrated and be like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, I was 27, I think almost 28 when I signed my deal with Warner, which was like a good few years older than most of, at least certainly of the other females that were kind of like up and coming in country music. And there were a lot of times where I felt really like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Like, I wish this happened sooner. This should have happened sooner. But I'm glad it didn't, because I didn't know who I was at 22 or 23, you know?
Sure.
And
nobody does.
yeah, right. I mean, like I would have, when I think of what it would have been like to have a lot of people watching me and have an audience of me growing up at 22, like I wouldn't wish that on anybody. That's tough, man. Yeah. Like, I mean, I just think about that all the time. And like, but by the time I went in to sign my deal with Warner, like I didn't have it all figured out, but I knew what I wanted, and most importantly, what I didn't want, you know, what I wanted to do. And I remember them asking me, like, what are your goals? You know, what do you see for yourself? And I just said, well, you know, I want to do something that is authentic to me and that's honest and that is different than what anybody else is doing, you know? So with all due respect, you know, if you see it like, oh, pretty blonde girl that can sing, we'll put her in this little dress and we'll have her cut this song and this and that. You know, I said, with all due respect, if that's what you're thinking, thank you, but no, thank you. You know, as much as I want a record deal, I don't want it like that, because even if what I want is going to take me a little bit longer to get to where I'm going, at least it'll be real, you know, and at least it's going to be done in a way where I can build real lasting fans and longevity. Like, I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. I don't want to be a flash in the pan. I want to build something that can be sustained. And I want to write songs that, you know, whether they go number one or not, I want to write songs that people care about beyond 6 months to a year at radio.
Right.
You know, I want people to go back and say that those songs mattered, you know, and sometimes you can get a song that's number one and no one's ever going to care about it after that. No one's going to talk about it. It's not going to change anybody's life. It's not going to be thought of as like legendary or iconic. I want to write iconic stuff, you know?
And so, yeah. Like timeless songs that are gonna,
right. Yeah. I want it to be timeless. It's not just something that was like trendy at the time that was working for everybody, you know.
Sure.
You know, the label not only understood that, but really supported my pursuit of that.
That's great. And you signed to that label in Nashville, or was that when you were still in Canada?
So that was when I was still in Canada. So after
you were taking trips down to Nashville.
Yeah, I was in Nashville pretty regularly at that point. And I had actually planned to move to Nashville, but then I got the record deal, so it made sense to stay in Canada and kind of build something there. But the end goal for me was still always to move to Nashville, because I wanted to be an American artist. I wanted to be on American radio. I wanted to tour in America, you know. So I kind of was like, made a plan, like, look, I'm going to give this a couple years. I'm going to build something here, you know, build a career, build a following, and then, you know, figure it out from there. So that's what I did. And I reached a point, you know, a few years in where part of it was I felt like, you know, if I wasn't on the road playing shows, then I was in Nashville writing. And I actually had very little time to be at home. And I just started feeling more and more disconnected from home. Because I felt like when I was on the road and when I was in Nashville, I was like growing into this person that I wanted to be. I was growing into the artist, and I was really focused and inspired because I was doing something that literally, you know, is the driving force behind who I am. And then I would go home and, you know, even just the people around me, and this isn't, I want to word this right, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm looking down on anybody or anything, but you know, I was just starting to not really share a lot in common with the people that I grew up around and that I was spending time with at home. And, you know, and they didn't understand what I was doing on the road and, you know, in
Mm-hmm.
Nashville and vice versa. And so, and I felt like because I loved these people and I wanted to spend time with them, it was almost like I felt like I would kind of like turn off artist Meghan when I would go
Right.
home, and I would get really caught up doing the same stuff I used to do before I had a career in music, and I just wasn't focused. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like almost like I was trying to be two different people and to live two different lives, and it just didn't add up. And
Sure. It was like
so
you felt more at home on the road and being
totally,
artist Megan than you did
100%.
at, at home. At home.
Absolutely, I did. I absolutely did. And, you know, I finally made the decision. I was on tour with Tom Cochran, and I made this decision while, you know, while I was on the road that I was going to move to Nashville when I got back. And I'm talking, flew in the night before, got up, spent a day packing my stuff, got a U-Haul trailer, packed my truck, and like left the next day and drove down to Nashville. And
Oh my
you know, and part of it was easy. I mean, so I have dual citizenship because my mother is American and my dad is
God.
Canadian.
Okay, I was gonna
You know,
ask you about that,
yeah,
the
thankfully I didn't
visas
have
and
to
all
go
that stuff.
yeah, I didn't have to go through the visas or anything like that. So that made it easy. And I had a friend, my first roommate, who was already in Nashville. So while I was on this tour, I was texting her. She found us a place. So
Hmm.
I came off this tour, got in my truck and drove down and was moving in, and was just like, boom, I'm just doing it. I'm just pulling the plug. And it was the best decision I ever made. I mean, hands down, because
Hmm.
you know, it's and it like I said, I want to be careful about how I word this because I love where I grew up. I love the people I grew up
Hmm.
with. You know, it's always I'm always gonna have, you know, a place in my heart for that place. But it in the end, it's not where I'm meant to be. I'm meant to be here. And I've met so many amazing, talented people that, you know, are living the same lifestyle. They have the same goals and frustrations and struggles that I do. And, you know, they keep me humble and they keep me inspired. And, you know, I get to live in this world of creativity and music all the time, which in reality, that's the happiest version of me is Megan that
Hmm.
gets to live in that world.
Hmm.
So
What year did you move down to Nashville, if you don't mind me asking?
let's see. It's been I think it'll be 4 years in this coming March. So it's been like just over 3.5 years, I guess.
Okay. Were you living there, or like with your first record, Grace and Grit, were you writing that record? Excuse me. Were you writing that record in Nashville, or was that an album that you had written and recorded when you were still living in Canada?
Um, I mean, just trying to think about different songs. I mean, I think it's definitely fair to say that most of the music I've put out was written in Nashville.
Okay. I was
Um,
curious if there was
yeah,
if it was different, like if your writing and approach, in songwriting was different
yeah,
in that environment, living in
yeah.
living in Canada versus living in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, that was the difference is like I didn't really have people I wrote with in
Oh, okay.
Canada. Like, you know, that like the only people that I'd ever written with was like my old bandmates, you know.
Hmm.
So I didn't really have like co-writers and people I could call up to write songs with when I was in Canada. So pretty much everything has been written in Nashville. I mean, technically my first single ever off of Grace and Grit was written in LA because I wrote that with Chad Kroger at his place out there.
Oh,
But
okay.
um yeah, pretty much everything has been written in Nashville for the most part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was do you remember what grabbed the attention when you signed to Warner and Warner Music Canada? Like, how did that, you talked about, that was kind of the validating moment.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that relationship started or how they approached you and the moment you got the contract?
I think it was, I mean, basically this was my old management, you know, she had kind of orchestrated bringing me into them. She had a connection, I guess, with somebody there and said, hey, I've been working with this girl. I want you to hear her.
Mm-hmm.
So she just kind of brought me in and, you know, I played them some songs and we just talked. And then I remember I was playing a showcase during Canadian Music Week in Toronto. And I also had an offer from Universal too. So we kind of had like a bidding war thing. And
Wow.
I'd actually been talking to Universal before I started talking to Warner. And I mean, both obviously, you know, they would have been great options, but it turned out, I remember that show that I played, both labels were there watching. So this was like kind of like a big moment for me. Like this is gonna win, because they had never seen me with a full band. And I felt like, and still feel like, that's one of my biggest strengths as an artist, simply because I have been playing and performing for so long. Like some artists, you know, sign a record deal and don't really have experience being on the road and like playing in bars. And, you know, I mean, I used to busk like literally for my grocery money and my rent money when I was in college and stuff. So I learned and became accustomed to how to win people over and how to put on a performance, you know, for a long time. And so I played this show, and basically they both came in with offers that were pretty equal, and, you know, in terms of money and contract or whatever. But for me, it came down to the people, and I just really connected with Steve Kane, who was the president at Warner Music Canada. And I always say this about him. I think what connected me with him was that I felt protected and safe in terms of the way that I felt he ran things, because I feel like as intelligent as he is in business, he's like an artist first, creativity first kind of person. And he runs the label that way. And I felt like my creativity and my individuality would be protected with him the most. And it was, I mean, I've just, you know, they've never forced me to put out music I didn't like. They've never forced me to work with people I didn't want to work with, or to, you know, wear things I didn't want to wear. Like I felt like I always had, you know, a lot of say in the way things went. And it's been very collaborative, which you don't always get with a major label.
Yeah,
So
they didn't.
You know,
They
I
didn't
felt
force that dress on you, and
right. I was like, look, you're not going to catch me in a dress. First of all, I am way too rambunctious on stage to be wearing a dress. That's just not going to happen. I mean, I'll be down on my knees. I'll be banging my head. Like dresses are not going to be a thing. And neither are high heels. I'll be jumping off that amp over there. Like I'll be wearing boots and jeans, and that's what's going to happen. You know? And, you know, and then, but I think to find that was so incredible and kind of special. And then to find it again with my US label over at Riser, you know, it was the same thing, in that, you know, I had a lot of time to get to know that team before we decided to start working together and sign the deal. You know, it started with me writing with a lot of their writers on the publishing side. And, you know, I think I remembered, I feel like a pivotal moment for me with that situation with Jen, who is the head at Riser. It was during CRS last year in Nashville, and they had their hotel suite, and they had invited me to go up there and hang. And we had kind of like, it was kind of understood that we were going to be working together, but we hadn't signed anything yet. It was just kind of in the beginning stages. And she had a couple radio people there and a couple of our other artists and songwriters, and we're all hanging out, and we were playing some songs, myself and my buddy Jordan. And I ended up playing Things I Shouldn't Say, which was one of my more current singles in Canada. And they all went crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, this song is a hit. Like, we love this. And like, we love just that you would, you know, kind of have the balls, I guess, to speak on this topic, you know, because the whole idea behind it was that, you know, when we wrote it, my friend Nicolette and I was like, we felt like that was kind of missing at radio for females. And we felt like females in radio got kind of scared about really truly speaking their mind, because women were kind of struggling at radio and country music. And, you know, and to me, when I feel backed up against the wall, or like I'm being put in a corner, my reaction is not to be more safe. My reaction is to be more, more aggressive, you know? Sure. And so I just was like, you know, women are sexual beings too. We also enjoy being intimate with our partners, but it's like, we're not supposed to say it out loud. We're supposed to pretend like, you know, we're supposed to be coy and pretend like we don't really want it, you know, and this is just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. So we wrote this song, and I kind of, you know, and they started asking me about it, and I kind of went off on this whole diatribe about, you know, women in country music and this whole thing. and on top of that, I've got to dip in, and I'm spitting in this cup, and I'm drinking whiskey, and I'm doing like, I'm just in full Meghan mode. And I kind of like caught myself and realized like, oh my gosh, you need to reel it in. Like, you know, and I'm cussing and everything. And, you know, Jen is very, very composed and sweet. Like, she doesn't cuss. And I turned to her and I was like, I'm so sorry if I kind of went offside there. I just, you know, I got passionate about this. And she looked at me and she goes, no, she goes, you are you, and I don't want you to ever be anything else. I want you to always speak your mind. And if that means you're cussing and you're dipping, then so be it. She's like, but there's something very engaging and charming about you just being unapologetically you. And she said, and I love that about you. And that's why I want to work with you. And I was like, wait a minute, like, you want to work with me because of these things? Usually people don't want to work with me because of these things.
Sure.
I'm like a liability because of these things, you know?
And then that ended up becoming a part of Wild as Me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, we were kind of still, you know, like in the beginning stages. And then, well, a big part of that, so Wild as Me, the title track of that song, was written with two of their writers on their roster, which was Michael Whitworth and Jordan Rager.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the first project that they were involved in. And there were plans initially that one of those songs would be my first single in America. But then because of COVID, basically because of COVID and just a lot of other things, like, it kind of derailed our whole plan for this year, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I mean, I look at it this way, because I mean, we were supposed to be going to radio here in America like the beginning of the summer, you know, closer to the beginning of the year. And then the Old Dominion tour in Canada, and I was supposed to be coming right off that, going to the studio, cut the new songs, choose the single in America from that, and start radio tour. But obviously none of that happened. I mean, we couldn't even get into the studio until I think it was August, because I mean, everything was closed, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so, but when I look back on it, I mean, I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I ended up writing my first card during quarantine over a Zoom write, you know, and it ended up being, to me, I think it's the perfect first single to introduce me, you know, to America. And that's, you know, that's what we're going with. And, you know, I just always like to believe that everything happens for a reason, and it's all going to pan out the way it should. And maybe, you know, maybe I wasn't as ready as I thought I was back then. And now I am. So maybe it was supposed to happen that way.
Sure. So you were getting ready to do this big launch.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I had all these, like, I mean, I had a whole year just like packed with touring, which my favorite part of what I do is the playing and touring. I mean, I was finally getting slots on all these big US festivals. And, you know, I mean, it was heartbreaking to have this. It was almost like, it was literally like this year was the year I'd been working towards my whole life. Like, it was the year that all the things that I had been dreaming about were going to happen. And then it just didn't happen. And, you know, I mean, I won my first Juno in quarantine. And I mean, you know, I always say to my American friends, I mean, it's like a Grammy. That's the equivalent in Canada. And I mean, nothing can take away from the fact that I earned that, and my team and I, you know, we won that and everything. But I didn't get the big party, and I didn't get to walk up on that big stage and accept that award and thank everybody and perform on that stage. And, you know, the whole like fanfare surrounding it, it almost felt like it didn't happen, or like it didn't matter, you know? So as much as it's been a lot of disappointments and letdowns this year, I have to believe that there is a silver lining, and that there's good things about it. I mean, one, I think I learned a lot about myself this year. And two, I think the biggest takeaway is the songwriting, because for the first time in my life, I have all this time to dedicate entirely to songwriting. It's not be on the road for 4 or 5 days, come home, have 2 days to do laundry, sleep, see everybody I love, and try and write a song.
Sure.
You know, it's like every day of the week, I'm waking up and I'm going to go write a song, and then I don't have anything I've got to do at night. So instead of being out and playing, or even being out at a bar or whatever, I'm sitting at home and I'm working on ideas, and I'm thinking about it, and I am putting more time and energy and work into writing a song than I ever have. And in turn, I'm writing some of the best songs I've ever written. And I'm figuring out, not only just improving the quality of the songs, but figuring out how to make them of good quality, but also authentic to me, and figuring out the best way to help my audience learn about me and who I am and what I'm all about through the songs I put out. So that's the big takeaway of it for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're able to, you know, be creative and use this time to do that. Because I've talked to people that are like, you know, in the beginning I was super creative, and then, you know, and then 2 months goes by and 3 months goes by, and then you know, and then you lose it. But
I almost feel like I did the opposite.
really,
And it was interesting because I saw the people that were like that. And like, for me, the first 2 months were a lot of feeling sorry for myself and just kind of depressed and like anxious and stressed out because a lot of things were still up in the air. And it was like, I mean, in the beginning, I was still thinking like, okay, at least by summertime, we're going to go back and play shows, you know, and things are going to come back. And so it was just like, kind of like out there treading water, like not really knowing what to do with myself. And I knew like in my head, I'm like, Megan, you need to be using this time to be writing and being creative. And I was just so blank. I was just so blocked. Like I had no creativity. I had no ideas. And I was mad at myself for not having creativity and not having ideas. And I think it finally got to a point where I was like, okay, it doesn't matter that you're not just naturally feeling inspired. You're going to sit down every day for like an hour and you're just going to play your guitar, or you're going to, you know, like I have this random word generator that I'll use sometimes when I'm feeling a little stale on ideas. And it'll literally you just hit refresh and it'll give you 3 different words. And I just hit refresh. And sometimes a word just sounds good, or 2 words go together and it triggers something. Like anything I can do to try and get an idea for a song. And so I was like, okay, until you get past this and start feeling creative again, which you will, because it always happens, you're going to sit down for an hour every day and force yourself to write something, even if it sucks, even if it's nothing, even if it's just a progression or one melody or, you know, a couple lines. Like you're going to do this every day and make it a habit. And I think that doing that helped trigger that creativity. And then all it takes is that one day, you know, to go into a co-write and write that song that makes you feel like, okay, I'm not completely useless.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, it inspires you and it motivates you to get better. And now I feel like I'm just on this crazy roll where I'm just feeling super creative and wanting to write all the time, and, you know, learning my weaknesses and how to address them, and learning what kind of co-writers are going to bring out the best in me. And, you know, what do they have that I'm missing that's going to fill in those holes and all that. And it's just been a really fulfilling and cool experience.
So My First Car, you said that's the most recent song you just put out, and that you talked about writing that over Zoom. So that song was written during the quarantine and everything.
Yes.
And then how is that recorded? And talk to me about writing that over Zoom. That must have been very strange.
Yeah, the Zoom thing was definitely a bit weird at first. I mean, the good thing about at least that particular song was that I'd already written with Joey and Adam before a couple times, and they're also 2 of my good friends. So that took away a little bit of that just kind of like awkwardness of being on Zoom in the first place. You know, and the good thing, I mean, Joey, generally speaking, like when Joey and I write together, I mean, he's also a really great producer and does really great tracks and demos. So, you know, usually what we would do is he would, on his end, he'd be working on a track or a demo, you know, and I would just have my guitar. We'd write the song, we'd go back and forth with some ideas, and then I would just put down like a rough work tape on my phone with just guitar and vocal and send that to Joey. And he would take that, make the track, and then he would send it back to me. I'd go in the studio, get on Pro Tools, record my vocals, send it back to him, and he would put it together in the demo and then send it out to us. So that's been kind of like the process, but it's been good because I've kind of brushed up on my Pro Tools skills, which is something I always wanted to do more of. I just didn't have the time. So yeah, I mean, Adam brought that idea in and he was like, you know, so I was just thinking kind of automatically that this would be a song I would write with, you know, for a guy artist. He's like, but then I was coming in with you and I thought, man, if there was ever a girl whose first car was a pickup truck, it's probably Megan. You know? So he asked me, he's like, is that true? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, technically, I mean, I also had, you know, there were cars that I drove before I bought my first truck, like that was my mom's car, or, you know, my grandmother had left 89 red Firebird to our family when she passed, and I drove that for a bit. But technically my first car, the one that I bought with my own money, you know, put my name on it and everything, was a truck. And they're like, well, what kind of truck was it? And I was like, 1998 GMC, you know, Chevy 2500 diesel, you know, it was an old work truck, had this old straight pipe. It was loud. And so, I mean, we literally wrote that whole song based off the actual truck that I had. And I mean, and everything else, you know, the whole story of it. And he's like, well, why don't, you know, I was like, how about we just kind of tell, because we didn't want to just be another like, oh, cool, a truck song. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, we wanted it to have some more substance. And so I was like, well, what if you frame it from like, you know, kind of essentially like explaining my raising and my personality through all of my firsts, you know? And so I started, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, my first drink was a warm Busch Light, and it was gross. You know, the first like boy I remember having a crush on, he grew up on a farm. He was like a farm kid, you know. I used to get on, you know, dirt bikes and mountain bikes and stuff. I was always scarring up my legs and hurting myself. And in fact, you know, this is my first buck. It is tattooed on my arm.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was just like, it was kind of a way, and which is why I think it was a great first single for America to kind of introduce me. It was kind of a roundabout way of giving people just some insight into how I grew up and my personality and, you know, what I'm like. And it was all tied into that truck. And I think the other thing too is that we were just thinking about the climate and the way that things are right now, and what people need. And we felt like writing a song that had, you know, kind of an up-tempo, feel-good vibe to it, but also content-wise was really nostalgic and kind of happy. I mean, I feel like most people have really good memories tied to their first vehicle, because it's like first taste of like independence. It's your first, it might be one of the first ways you get to really assert like, you know, who you are or something. You know, and to me, I was very, as a very like, you know, country kind of redneck girl, I was very proud to have this diesel truck, you know, that boys were like, that's your truck, you know? And so I feel like a lot of people are tied into that first vehicle, the road trips they took in it, you know, the experiences they had in it, all of that. And we wanted to give people a little bit of taste of like feel good nostalgia with the song.
That's
all the darkness.
Totally. It's a great idea. It's a great song. Is it going to be part of a record, a new record?
Yeah, we're definitely working on new material. It's just been kind of weird figuring out how to do it. Just like I said, the COVID thing, because it's like, you know, nobody really wants to put out a record that they can't promote and that they can't tour, and without being able to play shows, it's like, you don't want to, you know, put out this body of work that you're really proud of and have it kind of fall flat because you don't have the tools available to get it out there. So we have cut a couple new songs, and we are going to be going back in before the end of the year to cut some more. And we also actually still have a few that I really love from the previous recording session that didn't end up going on Wild As Me, because we were going to do a full length and then decided to do an EP. So you know, I have a Christmas song that's going to come out, I think, in November. So as far as my own like original stuff, it'll probably be beginning of next year before we put anything else out. But my goal, my hope is that we'll be doing some kind of EP, maybe like spring or something. We're just still kind of figuring out what makes the most sense. And like, there's still a lot of stuff up in the air because of COVID. So it's hard to make plans with that in place.
Definitely. Are you doing live stream performances, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of them. You know, I've been guests on a couple other people's live streams, and I've been, you know, I just partnered with a wine company, 1,000 Stories, to do some live streams with them as a partner. And then I've been doing my Girls Like Me, kind of usually like a bi-weekly live stream. And usually I just get on, play a couple songs. I've been kind of getting into the habit of like playing people new stuff that I've been writing, just to kind of like get some feedback, and, you know, for me to like try out some new stuff. And then sometimes I'll bring fans on to get on with me and like hang out with them for a bit, have them request a song if they have any questions. Like, I just really miss that connection with my fans. I mean, I don't think I really fully realized how much energy and motivation and inspiration I really drew from that human contact of like playing a show and seeing the audience and hearing them react live in the moment. I mean, doing the live streams, I'm doing them because like there's nothing else I can do. But to be honest, like, it kind of sucks doing them because you know, it's like you can play the songs and you know that they're there and they're listening and they're sending messages and stuff, but it's like, it's still just you alone in a room, and like you finish a song and it's just silent. Nobody's cheering, nobody's clapping, and you're just like, well, hope that was good. You know?
I heard there's like even a 15-second delay too. So
Yeah.
like you'll be done and you won't even see anything like right away. And it's almost like, uh-oh, did I screw up?
Yeah. It's weird, but I mean, it's kind of just, it's like the best we can do right now. So I'm trying to do that. But I think we're all kind of getting tired of it, the fans and the artists. You know, we're ready to get back to playing some shows. And I mean, it's starting to come back somewhat. I mean, I played at the Listening Room a couple weeks ago, playing just like a, you know, writers round thing. We're still not at full capacity for those venues, but I mean, we're selling them out every time because people just so badly want to hear live music. And even just being on a stage, just playing, you know, acoustic and around, still not the same as playing with my band, but just playing on a stage into a microphone with a live reactive audience is just like been so good for my soul. And I'm just craving that more and more. So I'm just hoping we can get back to it sooner than later. Because I mean, there's a whole industry that's struggling right now.
Oh yeah.
You know? And I think sometimes people that are not in this industry are a little insensitive to the fact that, like, just because you view what we do as like extra, as luxury, as entertainment, like this is our livelihood. I mean, God, if I be told one more time how non-essential what I do is, I mean, it's pretty freaking essential to me.
Sure, you know? Right.
Pretty
and
essential.
A lot of people and all the people
my mortgage and you know, and my band and the crew and all the other people, like beyond artists.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the people that they don't even think about. It's like
the
all
sound
the people
guys,
that
the
work
lighting
on
guys,
the
the merch
tours
guys
that just lost a whole year of pay, and you know, it's the people that own the venues and the smaller,
the agents, the promoters. I mean, there are great venues that are closing down right now because they can't afford to stay open. And you know, and it's a tough thing to say, and it's a tough conversation to have because, you know, I think it goes without saying, of course I care about people's well-being and people's health, and you know, I don't want anybody to get sick, I don't want people to be hurt, but there also comes a point where it's like, well, how long can we do this for? Because the industry is dying, and we have to figure out a way to get back, because this is a whole bunch of people that have lost their livelihood and their income, and beyond that, on a personal note, like, you know, their reason for being, like, this is so tied into who I am as a person and my happiness to be able to play shows and, you know, put music out to people. Like, I'm really, really missing that part of me. And I know that all the other artists out there are feeling the same way. They're feeling a little bit lost and a little bit empty without it.
Yeah. At least you said you got to do the writers round.
Yes.
There's an audience there. Or is it okay? Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
How do they set that up? Is it very like
they just kind of
out?
So many people to a table, they kind of spread out they just took out, like, you know, half the tables maybe, and it's just everybody has to spread out. You have to be wearing a mask when you're not sitting at the table, you know, all the same kind of rules for any like restaurant or bar. But I mean, and people listen, people abided by the rules, people were careful, people were safe. I think where it got tough was like after the show, people wanting to come up and take a picture and say hey, and like for us, like, of course we want to do that, and we don't want to say no and seem like, you know, seem rude or anything, but it's also like thinking about the safety of other people. And you know, and also it's like if someone goes and posts that picture, there's always going to be somebody on the internet that's like, oh my God, you're so irresponsible, you don't care about people. And it's like, well, they approached me to get a picture and I don't want to seem rude and tell them no. It's like, what do you do? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And people are just so quick to judge and like cancel somebody now for over anything. And it's just a really toxic environment on the internet right now, especially for people that have a bigger platform and who are kind of being judged and watched for everything they do.
Yeah, you're more of like under a microscope for any little thing. Like, oh, can you believe that she took a picture of that fan without a mask or whatever it is?
And it's like, well, I was thinking about the fan.
Right.
Like, what is it going to make them upset if I say no? Is it going to hurt their feelings? Is it going to make them not want to listen to my music anymore? You know?
Right. Or they could go on the internet and be like, can you believe that Meghan Patrick does not take pictures of people?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
That happens. That is a very real thing. That happens. Like, it's tough.
It's crazy. Yeah. I know. Hopefully it'll all kind of get back to normal, at least sometime soon.
We need to get back to normal. I think part of there's a lot of people that are out of work or not living their normal lives, and they've got far too much time to just sit on the internet and, you know, and look for things to, I don't know, maybe look for things to bring some excitement into their day. And maybe for them, it's like, if you're an unhappy person, that excitement comes from like insulting someone else or picking a fight with them on the internet, or, you know, it's like this mob mentality. It's like, if you can go and say something to that artist, let's say I take that picture with that fan and I, you know, and we're not wearing masks or something, and then he makes that comment about me not wearing a mask and how insensitive and how uncaring that is, and then he gets a couple likes on that comment, so then he feels emboldened because now other people have said, hey, I agree with you, and then it just like takes off. And it's like, man, like, why?
Yeah, it snowballs so quickly.
I just never understood that need to like go and say something mean or disrespectful to someone I don't know on the internet. I just don't get that.
Yeah,
but that just comes from an unhealthy person, someone who's upset, I guess, in their own world. But I just don't understand that.
Yeah, totally. Wow. Well, hopefully, like I said, everything gets back to normal here soon enough. And yeah, you'll be able to perform live and tour and support the record and do all the things that you do that everybody loves. So I appreciate you talking with me today. This has been great. Thank you so much. I do have one more question for you, Meghan. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yes. I'd say like two main things. First of all, be a good person, be a good hang, be kind to everybody that you meet. You know, I mean, first of all, on a business level, you never know who you might be meeting. It could be someone that works at a label or, you know, a publishing company, whatever. And it's like, and I think especially in country music, you will learn that like being a good person and being a good hang and being trustworthy goes a long way in this industry. And it gets around, and people want to help good people. People are more inclined to give you that opportunity or to give you, you know, that helping hand or that put a good word in for you when you've treated them with respect and kindness. You know, it just don't get full of yourself. Don't get a big head. Don't think you're above talking to somebody. Like, be kind to everybody. And beyond that, as an artist, I mean, have influences, have inspiration for sure. But the most important thing that you can do is figure out who you are. You should not chase anything but your own authenticity. Don't chase something that's trendy. Don't try and be someone that's working. Like, don't try and be Marin. Don't try and be Kelsey. Don't try and be Luke. We already have those. You're never going to out Luke Combs, you know? So I think like you need to figure out who you are, what makes you special, what makes you unique, and how you're going to connect to your fans and follow that boldly and unapologetically. Even when people are telling you it's not going to work, being you will always work. And anybody who tells you that not being you, anybody that tells you that being you isn't going to work is just not somebody you need on your team. You got to find like-minded people that know who you are and believe in you for who you are and aren't just trying to mold you into something else. Because it's just, you're wasting your time with that. You need to be you. So I guess that's my advice.